Can you become financially free in 5 years? The real math. Let me be upfront with you before we go anywhere. Yes, 5-year financial freedom is real. People do it. The math works. But the version most people are imagining when they Google that question is not the version that actually happens, and that gap between the fantasy and the reality is exactly why most people who try this end up frustrated, not free. So let's talk about what the math actually says. Not the motivational version. The honest one. First, what does financially free even mean to you? Because that word, free, is doing a lot of heavy lifting. For some people it means never working again. For others it means working only when they want to. For others still, it means just not panicking every time a bill arrives. The math changes completely depending on which one you mean. The most common framework used in the financial independence community is the 4% rule. The idea is simple. If your annual expenses are, say, $40,000, you need 25 times that amount invested, $1 million, to theoretically live off your portfolio forever without running it down. That's the full retirement number. Now here's where most 5-year plans quietly break down. They use that number as the target, then reverse engineer a savings plan that technically reaches it, on paper, in a spreadsheet, with perfectly assumed returns every single year. And they leave out the part where real life doesn't cooperate. The savings rate problem nobody talks about honestly. To accumulate serious wealth fast, you don't need a higher income as much as you need a brutal savings rate. The math is clear. Someone earning $60,000 and saving 60% of their take-home will build wealth faster than someone earning $120,000 and saving 10%. That sounds obvious when you say it out loud. But most people don't live like it's true. The average household savings rate in the US sits somewhere around 4 to 6%. At that rate, you're not retiring in 5 years. You're not retiring in 25 years. You're working until your body stops. To hit financial independence in 5 years, you're generally looking at a savings rate north of 70%. On a take-home of $50,000 a year, that means living on roughly $15,000 annually. That's not a diet. That's a full transplant of your lifestyle. Now, can some people do it? Yes. Genuinely. People with low expenses, no dependents, high incomes, or some combination of all three. But it requires every single variable to cooperate simultaneously: income, expenses, market returns, and zero major emergencies. That's a lot of dominoes that all need to stay standing. Here's the thing about market returns that most 5-year plans quietly ignore. The stock market averages around 7 to 10% annually over long periods. That number is real and well documented. But average over 30 years doesn't mean consistent over 5. In any specific 5-year window, the market might return 60% total. Or it might return 3%. Or it might dip into negative territory and recover just enough to not feel like a disaster. If your 5-year plan depends on 10% annual returns to hit the number, and year 3 hands you a 20% drop, you don't just fall behind. You fall behind with a smaller base, which means your recovery takes longer, which means your year 5 finish line just moved to year 7 or 8. Sequence of returns risk is the formal name for this. It basically means that when bad years happen matters just as much as how bad they are. A crash in year 2 of your plan hurts far more than a crash in year 20, because you haven't accumulated enough yet for compound growth to absorb the damage. This is the part most 5-year YouTube plans don't model honestly. They assume smooth, consistent returns. Markets don't do smooth. So what actually happens when real people try this? The most common outcome is not failure. And it's not perfectly hitting the target either. It's something in between that doesn't get talked about much because it doesn't make a clean headline. Someone goes all in for 3 or 4 years. Cuts hard, saves aggressively, invests consistently. They don't hit the full number by year 5. But by year 5, they're sitting on $300,000 or $400,000, an amount that, left alone in the market for another 15 years, grows into full financial independence without them adding another dollar. This is called Coast FI. And honestly, it might be more valuable than the 5-year version. Because here's what Coast means in practice: you've done enough of the hard work early that compound growth finishes the job for you. You still need to cover your living expenses from income, you haven't stopped working. But you've removed the pressure of saving for retirement entirely. Every dollar you earn from here on is just for your life, not your future. That's a genuinely meaningful shift. The weight that lifts when you know retirement is handled, even if it's 20 years away, changes how you feel about work, about money, about daily decisions. It's a different kind of freedom, but it's real. The income side of the equation matters, but not in the way most people think. A lot of 5-year FI content focuses heavily on increasing income, side hustles, skill stacking, freelancing on top of a full-time job. And yes, more income creates more room to save. That part is true. But there's a behavioral trap hiding in income growth that almost nobody warns you about. When your income goes up, your lifestyle tends to follow. Not because you're weak-willed. Because spending more when you earn more feels natural, normal, and deserved. This is lifestyle inflation, and it quietly cancels out most of the gains from earning more. The people who actually reach financial independence fast are not necessarily the highest earners. They're the people who kept their expenses flat, or close to it, as their income climbed. That gap between what you earn and what you spend is the only number that actually matters. Everything else is just context. What are you actually trading for this? This is the question most financial content skips, and I think it's the most important one. 5 years of genuine, aggressive saving means 5 years of saying no. No to travel you'd otherwise take. No to the apartment upgrade. No to casual spending with friends. No to a lot of things that aren't luxuries, they're just normal life. Some people look back on that trade and feel it was completely worth it. They bought decades of freedom for a few years of discomfort. Others get 2 years in, burn out, and realize the life they were delaying was the one they actually wanted to be living. Neither of those people made the wrong choice. They just had different priorities, and the math doesn't tell you which priority is correct. Only you know that. So, can you become financially free in 5 years? The honest answer is, it depends on what you mean by free, and it's possible but not probable for most people in the way they're picturing it. What's much more likely, and still genuinely worth pursuing, is that 5 years of intentional financial effort puts you in a position most people never reach. Maybe you hit Coast FI. Maybe your investments reach a point where a modest second income makes you fully independent. Maybe you just eliminate financial anxiety from your life, which is its own form of freedom. The 5-year target is a useful forcing function. It makes you take the math seriously, build real habits, and move faster than you would otherwise. Whether you hit it exactly almost doesn't matter. What matters is that you started. And that you kept going long enough for the math to start working in your direction. Because once it does, once compound growth is doing more work than your paycheck, the whole game changes.